Hiram Club. B.Scott from 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 Hiram Club. Do the Hiram Club.
All right, it is the B Block Podcast. Appreciate y'all for joining. And we are past the trade deadline. The trade deadline has come and gone, and it went about as we expected it to go, the way that we've been talking about it over the last couple of weeks, really all season. There should be no surprise that the Rockets did not do much of anything at the trade deadline. They didn't do anything actually at the trade deadline. It was an active deadline, so a lot of players move around, but as it pertains to the Rockets, they are practicing patience and looking at it more so as poor injury luck, and that improving this roster, the cost benefit analysis and improving this roster is just not in their favor. And I would actually agree with this point. I would agree. Champ Slice, shout out to Champ Slice in early on the chat. He says, thank God we didn't go after Giannis. Giannis didn't move. And so that's something to kind of put a pin in for a little bit. But just as it pertains to this particular deadline and the Rockets, I should say, right? This is what we've been expecting, for the Rockets to stick with the team that they have now and hope for the best with a healthy all-NBA level Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun playing at a borderline all-star level. It's still got a lot of controversy about that with him not making the all-star team. But having some patience with those guys, the young guys, and even after watching and listening to and following what Rockets GM Rafael Stone addressing the media right here just about an hour ago, talking with my colleagues about kind of their thought process and their logic for standing pat and not really doing anything at the trade deadline. The thought process is they're going to lean into this group. They feel like they've had poor injury luck, but I also got the sense of and the feeling of kind of this doubling down on Fred VanVleet and the possibility that he might come back, which, to be clear, would be great for the Rockets. I mean, if Fred VanVleet is able to come back, let's say the Rockets are just able to survive and just get in the playoffs. Hopefully, you'd like for them to at least be able to host a playoff series, but let's just say they're not a play-in team. They get one of those actual top seeds to get into the playoffs. And Fred VanVleet is able to come back. They did not seem to they still don't seem to be ready to rule him out. They're so reluctant to rule him out that they're even kind of teasing the idea that he might come back. Fred's the toughest player that we've ever seen or that we've ever been around. If Fred is able to play, he's going to play. I believe him. And I think that if Fred VanVleet were to come back, that it would have a tremendous impact on the team. But that's what they're banking on. They're banking on this group and the possibility that Fred might come back. So KD and Alperen Sengun playing at all-star levels. In KD's case, an all-NBA level. Sengun earlier in the year playing at an all-NBA level, not quite as much these days. And nobody played at an all-NBA level last night, just to be clear. We might get to that before we get out of here, but I wanted to react to the trade deadline first. I feel like if you're talking about winning at this point and you're a Rockets fan, you're now really asking a lot of those two guys that I just mentioned and of Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and Reed Shepherd. It is time for all of those guys to grow up really fast. And all of them have got some experience now. Reed, the least of it. But the rest of those guys have played in the playoffs. They've experienced this season, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows. Now that you have doubled down on this roster and decided that you would rather be patient than urgent, that you don't want to as Will Guillory in The Athletic called it, overcorrect. And I think that's a proper way to put it. You don't want to overcorrect. Now you are relying and asking more of Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and Reed Shepard with the hope that Fred VanVleet comes back. Beyond that, your best players are Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Okogie, in no particular order. DFS, Josh Okogie, Aaron Holiday, Clint Capella, and Jay Sean Tate. After that, after the core and those two all-stars. That is the team. That is the team. So what's interesting to me now is how, like, this whole and again, I think it's worth pointing out before I even go any further that we've already like been stressing how limited the Rockets are with their cap situation, with the salaries, with the decisions that they made in the offseason, how difficult it would be for them to make a move. And when I talked earlier about the cost benefit analysis, they were stuck in a rock, like basically a rock between a hard place, um, with this from the standpoint of they could either make uh, a drastic move, some kind of seismic move that they were just never gonna make, or they could make a move along the margins that would be too costly for it to be worth it to them, right? So that's what I meant earlier when I said the cost benefit analysis, the it was not in their favor in either going big or even a marginal move in their view, and I could see that. It does open up a lot of questions about what the to me it opens up a lot of questions about what the summer is going to look like. And so now you get into and what I think has happened over the course of the last couple of weeks with folks being hopeful that maybe they would make a move. The fact that Giannis was on the trade block and we were having those conversations, we were at least talking about it, right? Now what I've seen, at least in how we talked about him or how we talked about this whole situation, is that like the Rockets fan base and the people that follow the Rockets have essentially developed these two factions. Okay. Got these two factions. And those factions are run it back versus blow it up. See, and so this is how it works. You've got the positive patient crowd, which I think is reasonable. I think everybody is actually reasonable because reasonable minds can disagree on this. And like, I don't really think that there's a way right now to prove who is right or to say that there's a right or wrong. But you got run it back versus blow it up. You got a positive patient crowd, and they're saying, hey, next year you get for sure next year you get Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams, maybe DFS is recovered and fully healthy. You don't get a drop off from KD, and you're back to being a contender. Like just be patient and don't lose your mind, right? And then you got this more antsy crowd that's looking around and saying, man, I'm not really sure that at age 32 Fred VanVleet coming off an ACL injury and Steven Adams, who is aging and ailing again, if that's going to be enough for me to consider this to be a championship contending team after what I'm watching from the core, the inconsistency, some of the same problems that existed last year exist this year with and without a point guard. And so to me, I think that there is far less certainty in that whole idea than even the most optimistic fan would like to give credit for. Hey, Fred VanVleet's gonna come back, Steven Adams gonna come back, and then all is gonna be well. I think it's gonna help, obviously, but you're making some assumptions there that's just what's gonna fix it. There's no question that this team has been worse without Fred VanVleet than when he's been on the floor, right? He's missed time every year, and now he's missing this entire year, and they've been worse without him than they've been with him. But they've had a lot of these same issues before. So you got the antsy crowd that wants to trade for Giannis. They want to trade. They wanted to trade for Giannis at the deadline. They want to trade for Giannis in the summer. I made the case right here on this podcast. And these are people that are much more willing to disrupt the young core and the concept of a longer runway to do this, to like up the ante a little bit, to maximize the KD years, right? To take advantage of this time where it seems pretty rare that somebody that is this age could still be this good the way that Kevin Durant is right now. Let's go all in. If you got to rebuild after the KD era, after the Giannis era, after the whatever it is era, let's do it after that. And so I think that each side has like done this inexact, somewhat risky calculation, right? And neither side really knows, like I was saying, neither side really knows which one is right. You know? So I think it's going to be real wild watching how this season ends for me. How much is the patience tested, and whether by the end of it, like everyone thinks that they're just a healthy Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams away from being right back in this thing. They think that investing in the young core long term is smarter than compromising it to say invest in a Giannis long term, or for however long term that would be. You get the pushback of, well, like the pushback that I'll get is, how do you build a team around Giannis? Where is your floor spacing going to come from? Who's going to be your center and all of that? And meanwhile, I just watched no less than a dozen players move teams this week that I had no idea they were going to be moving. Some of them I had no idea they were even available. And it's just got me in a space of like, I don't know how exactly they would build a team around Giannis. But the idea is, for the anti crowd, man, you go in there with Giannis, KD, Amen Thompson, Fred VanVleet, and whatever is left over from those moves, and you put together a team. That's how a lot of people look at it. And I think that that's reasonable as well. All of this patience is going to be tested toward the end of the season. True Blue says that y'all should have went for somebody. That half court game looked horrible last game. Man, a lot of us were talking, man, even before the game, like at halftime, like this was a horrible game from the start. Like I went to this game. I went to this Celtics game last night, and I left at halftime because I wasn't feeling my best, and I didn't want to be up in the arena, not feeling great and all of that kind of stuff. And then the game didn't really seem to be worth anybody's time either. Yo, I still got the notes here, like the actual printed notes. I only have to look it up on the computer. These jokers were 7 of 21 to combined, right before that third quarter when the Celtics just boat raced the Rockets. The teams were a combined 14 of 43, a combined 14 of 43. 14 of 43 in the first quarter. That's what we watched. We watched them go a combined 3 of 20 from 3. That's how trash that game was to start. And the second quarter wasn't that much better. But then that third quarter is like the Rockets let go of the rope. And you could see such a contrast. True Blue, I'm glad you mentioned this, man. You could see such a contrast in how like the Celtics without Jaylen Brown, and of course Jason Tatum has been gone all year, without their best players, everything still ran perfectly. It still ran like a machine. They still ran with intention and purpose, and you knew, like, everybody knew their roles. And the biggest thing with the Celtics is that their spacing is never compromised, no matter like who's ball dominant, who's out there. They stay true to their principles. They stay true to their spacing, and they're just a well-coached, well-oiled machine. And the Rockets look like the exact opposite, having really all of their players, except the ones that we've talked about that are injured for the season. They had everybody available to them. Everybody that mattered available to them. Everybody that matters at this point. And it looked like that. And we've seen it look like that before, even with point guard play, as incredible and as important as Fred VanVleet has been at times. So I think there's an argument for that. But again, going back to the earlier point, they've shown a commitment to this group. Champ Slice says they're about to lean into a second round exit. I'm curious what y'all think is their ceiling. Because I think Champ Slice is right, man. I don't know if they're leaning into the second round exit, but this doesn't feel like a conference finalist, does it? To y'all, does anybody feel like this is a conference finalist? Because the argument from a lot of people is that it would if Fred VanVleet was healthy and out there. It would if Steven Adams was healthy and out there. Let's see what it looks like next season when those guys are healthy and out there. Senior Buble, shout out to Senior Buble. Appreciate you for being here. Says, glad we didn't do any dumb panicking. I would rather give our youngsters a chance to develop. This is the logic of the team, and this is the logic of a lot of the fan base. When I say patience versus urgency, a lot of folks are patient with this thing. They do believe in the young core. They do believe that, hey, these guys just need time to develop, and it's all good. I'm curious how the patience people though reconcile the minutes for Kevin Durant. This was one of the big things for me before I left the game last night. Was like, man, Kevin Durant played more minutes. How about this for inefficiency? And I'm not talking about Kevin Durant inefficiency. I'm talking about the use of Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant played more minutes than anybody in the first half of that game, and all they got out of him was 5 shots and 4 free throws. They did get 5 rebounds out of him. But he played just about 21 minutes of the first 24 minutes of the game, and they barely got anything out of him. I'm worried about the way that the team, and specifically Durant, is being managed. See what else we got in here. Senior Buble also says they have to believe Fred VanVleet is coming back this year in some form. So if you look at a lot of the conversation from the availability from just about an hour ago, it does sound like they feel that way. See how much of this I can pull up. But I mentioned earlier, they talk about Fred being the toughest player that they've been around. This is Rafael Stone talking, the Rockets general manager. Toughest player that I've been around. Fred is literally the toughest NBA player I've ever met. If he can play, he'll play. We want Fred to do what's best for Fred. He's a big part of what we've done the last 2 years, and we expect he's going to be a big part of what we do moving forward. So pretty clear that they are committed to Fred VanVleet and that they are hopeful that he is somewhat of an answer to Senior Bublé's point. I lost it here to the point of they have to believe that Fred VanVleet is coming back this year in some form. Champ Slice says that he's done with Tari, doesn't play back-to-backs, and if he dribbles, it's a coin flip on whether or not it's going to be a turnover. It definitely is a bit nerve-wracking when you see him in the fast break or if you see him trying to initiate the offense. He does have a lot more of a bag. The one thing I'll give Tari credit for is that it feels like he improves every year. The injury stuff is, concerning and I imagine frustrating for a lot of people, but I give him credit, man. He improves every year. His shooting has been outstanding this year for the most part. The only complaint seems to be something that I'm not sure how much he can control, and that's whatever's going on with him health wise from year to year. But yes, the best ability is availability. I would agree with that cliche, Champ Slice. Uh, Brandon says, might as well trade the picks. Might as well trade the picks when you know Adam Silver will rig the draft anyway. Well, let's see. Here's the hoping that he rigs it in the favor of the Rockets. Senior Buble says, I think this team should carry contender expectations. Anything less than the Western Conference Finals is a failure for this team as is. Okay, so let's go with that for a second. You believe that? Senior Buble? Anything less than the conference final? Do you think this is a contender, though? Like, I'm looking at the standings and I'm trying to think. I've got at least two teams better than them. And then one where it's a push, three more where it's a push. Like I don't know. You know, they get a 4-5 against Minnesota. Let's play it out to the end of the season right now. They get a 4-5 against Minnesota. Who you got in that series? And then if they win against Minnesota and then play the Thunder in the second round, who you got in that series? So I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Like I can see as early as a first round exit. I could see if the seeding goes differently, they could get to the conference finals. But it's a crapshoot at best, and it doesn't feel like a legitimate. I guess you could say a possible conference finalist, but it's going to take a lot of work to feel like they could be the representative. Like they would get to the end and have to face either OKC, San Antonio, Denver, and have to get through some combination of them and Minnesota and the Lakers in between that. It doesn't feel like they stand out enough to me. Which is part of the urgency. Part of the urgency, like when you talk about a year of Kevin Durant and feeling like you're second round, what my man said earlier, Champs like saying pushing that second round exit. They about to lean into a second round exit. That's disappointing. Let's see. What else we got? Senior Buble says also that the Rockets had to bet on their youth and it's their best hand. Could be. I know that's the hope. Getting Giannis cuts your window to 3 years. Yes. So this is the thing that I've been tackling. Yes, in theory, getting Giannis cuts your window to 3 years. But my question is, what exactly is your window past the KD years anyway? You know, there's that's where the difference of opinion is at. Where Senior Buble looks like he believes that it's a contender now and that it could even be a contender after KD is gone and that you got like this decade-long runway because everybody is so young. There are people that are saying, and I'm leaning toward this side. I think I've committed toward this side that there's no guarantee that just with the young core after the KD days that you're a contender for the next however many years that people are saying. You know, like what is the ceiling of a really nice young core without that clear upper echelon talent? Just like say, we got our backs blown out by Peyton Pritchard and the Boston Celtics on Black History Appreciation Night. Can't make this shit up, man. Hey, Chep. I was sitting there like the whole time, like, man, I know I'm not sitting here. And Jaylen Brown is not out there. Jason Tatum, I think I'm watching him sitting over there on the bench. And these boys getting cooked by Derek White and Peyton Pritchard. Both really nice players. But when you go in the game and you're supposed to have Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun, Amen Thompson, Reed Shepard coming off the bench, Jabari Smith Jr., who, by the way, had a really good first quarter and I thought was decent in the first half. I don't think that the numbers, what did the numbers end up being? Yeah, man, he had 11. Everybody was on the wrong side of the plus minus, but he had 11 points in the first half, played some really good defense on Derek White, some one-on-one on-ball defense. I thought he was a bright spot of the first half. But, man, I'm watching that, and I'm like, man, y'all got all y'all main guys. And these guys are Derek White with the first unit, Peyton Pritchard to come in after that, and they're cooking. It was a damn shame. Senior Buble said boys were scared they was about to get shipped off last night. I hadn't actually considered that. That's an interesting point. Last game before the trade deadline, and I'm spooked. Oh, Champ Slice, I know you're not doing. I actually don't know the answer to this. The how serious the SGA injury is. How long is he hurt? If it bothers him all season, maybe there's a chance for Spurs and Chicken Nuggets have our number. I mean, so you just named 3 teams right there that you like better than the Rockets right now. The question, the big question is going forward, does Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams fix that? Is that enough? Fred VanVleet coming off of an ACL injury, as incredible and as important as he's been, does that? And again, I mentioned these different, somewhat risky calculations earlier. The patience crowd is doing the risky calculation that Fred VanVleet coming off of the ACL injury is just going to fix it. That these young guys are going to figure it all out. That Kevin Durant isn't going to have any drop off. Those are the calculations of the patience crowd and the run it back crowd. The urgency crowd, the blow it up crowd is doing the risky calculation of adding somebody like Giannis, while it may give you a shorter runway, gives you a better chance than any point of, let's say, not adding him or just relying on whatever you build with this core. That the ceiling with Giannis is going to be higher, even if there's a challenge in building a team around him, that the ceiling with him is going to be higher than the one that you got with this team right now, especially after Kevin Durant is gone. Those are both risky calculations and inexact. And I don't know how at this point you could say, like, you just got to watch that whole thing play out. And if you're a blow it up urgency person, you're somebody that's hoping that the Rockets are in the, that you're first of all, you're glad that Giannis didn't get traded, and you're hoping that the Rockets are in the conversation for trading for him this summer. If you're a patience run it back person, you're hoping that you see a lot from this young core, a lot more than what you saw from that embarrassment. And I got to say this, man, that was an embarrassment last night. We got to just, before they get to this game, which is going to start in a half hour or so, we got to just say that was one of the more awful losses that we've seen since this whole era of Rockets basketball. Unacceptable. But if you're in that crowd, you're hoping that you see a lot more from these young guys, a lot more consistency, that you see something different in this half-court offense, and that Fred VanVleet is the answer. All risky calculations, man. Senior Buble says KD looked old last night because my man's is what we call tired, whether you want to admit it or not. Playing way too many minutes. I mentioned that earlier. Playing way too many minutes. Had played way more than anybody had played in the first half to very little results. So I'm not gonna be at this game. Obviously, I'm here home talking to y'all. Gonna watch it from the house. Real intrigued to watch The Hornets, one of the hotter teams in basketball, and how the Rockets respond to, again, one of their worst performances of the season and of this era. Champ Slice, I won't be at the party, but shout out to Area 45 for their 2-year anniversary over at Sports Radio 610, the night show. Um, Sean Bajani, Patrick Creighton been putting a lot of sweat equity into that show. So Champ Slice, if you get a chance to go out there and support them, do that. Anybody else that is able to support them, y'all should do that as well. So that's pretty much what I wanted to get to, man. I'm gonna watch this game. I'm gonna get ready for this game. I'm kind of just really wanting to flush last night's game and pretend like it didn't happen, but it's kind of hard to pretend like it didn't happen because I was there and it very much did happen. And that shit was terrible. Um, so yeah, that's it. B Block Podcast. Make sure you are subscribed, comment, tell your people. We'll do this again, I imagine. I'm actually thinking about coming back after after this game tonight. But if I don't, we'll talk tomorrow. So y'all be good.